I'm grateful to be here. My wife is watching online, my daughter Addison and Kennedy. My wife Jennifer's online. Hi, honey. I've been with my wife for 13 years. We've been married 10. Greatest blessing of my life other than knowing Jesus, right? Jesus is awesome because sometimes you just need Jesus. If you're married, you definitely need Jesus. You know. Y'all know. Come on. How many of you are married? Well, that's a lot of. How many of you are in an intimate relationship? Never the same hands, is it? In the same hands. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Come on, guys. Let's get focused. No, my marriage is fine. My wife can't keep her hands off of me. Can't blame her. Can't blame her, though. Anyway, we have two beautiful daughters. Addison, 7. Kennedy, 3. Pretty awesome. My wife did 2 all-natural home births at home. I was there. I was like, girl, you the man. No, not really. Amazing. My wife's incredible, so I'm so grateful. I love you, Jen. Today, we're going to talk about 3 things on how to get the most out of today. Say today. Today matters, and I'll tell you why. There's a war going on, and the war is for your mind. Yeah. And a lot of times we're waiting on tomorrow to do the thing that we need to do today. Here's what I heard procrastination is. You take notes, please take some notes because I'm going to drop a lot on you this morning. Here's one of the things that I've always said. A short pencil is better than a long memory. You ever known somebody's like, oh, I'll remember that. And then you ask them like 3 hours later, now what was that? And they're like, you know, I'm just having a senior moment. You ever had somebody say that? Senior moment. But here's what I want to do today. I want to talk to you about a few things. And number one, I want you to know that there is a war for your mind. And I didn't plan on doing this, but this morning when we did a little team huddle, it's just some interesting things, interesting dynamics go on sometimes. And so I put this little thing in, and last night I said, you know what, I'm going to add this, and I did, and I sent the images over to Beth, but I understand why now. But if you guys would, if you look up on the screen, a friend of mine came to the gym where I work out. I do kickboxing, Taibo. My wife is an instructor. Yes, my wife is a kickboxing instructor. That's not the right slide, but that's all right. Go to the T-shirt, the first one. But a friend of mine, we're there working out. Obviously, you guys tell I work out a lot. I don't know. But my friend Julie, her husband played for the Green Bay Packers when they won the Super Bowl. Julie comes in. Julie's got a T-shirt on. It says this. You guys see that? What's that T-shirt say? Not today, Satan. Now I kind of get it. I'm like, all right, well, this is why I wanted to put this in there. It said, not today, Satan. But I remember when she walked into the gym, have you ever tried to read someone's T-shirt before and it was kind of folded up a little bit and you couldn't really read what it said? And so I thought the shirt said, not today, Stan, not today. And so I was walking around in the gym going, who is Stan? Who is Stan? Who is Stan? And a friend of ours, Sandy, said, Ronnie. I said, yeah. She said, the shirt says, not today, Satan. And I was like, oh, yeah, I knew that. Stan is Satan's third cousin. He's not quite as mean as Satan, but he's still not the kind of guy you want to hang out with, right? He don't live in hell, lives in Vegas. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But here's what I want to tell you today. Before we get started, the reason that I'm going to come and share what I'm going to share with you today is that what you put into your mind is incredibly important. There's a war for your mind, and you have to guard your mind as if it's the most precious commodity that you have. Because if the enemy can get your mind, he can get your life. And if the enemy can't get your mind, here's what he'll do. He'll go after your children's mind. He'll go after your spouse's mind. He'll go after the people around you to make it harder and harder on you. And so what we have to do to make the most of today, before I even give you the 3 things, is you have to take authority for what you have right now in your life. And sometimes when the pressure comes, because it will, you have to stand in authority knowing the name of Christ and using it every chance you get. A few months back, my daughter Addison, I was telling Pastor Jeff and Melinda yesterday, Addison got sick. She was running like 104, 105 fever for a few days. 3 or 4 days. I get home from a trip, and I'm like, I'm not getting sick. Daddy ain't getting sick. Ain't nobody got time for that. Daddy ain't getting sick. And I go home, and it's wrecked. My daughter Kennedy, who's 3, Addison, who's 7, and my wife Jennifer's laying in the bed sick. Fortunately, they happen to be at my mother's house. And I come in, and my daughter Addison is like sitting on the sofa next to me, and she's had this fever for many days. And she sits next to me, and Addison, who's one of the sweetest little beings on the planet, looks at the ground and starts pointing at nothing on the floor. and looks at me and looks through me with these eyes like she's just looking through me, and she starts screaming, "Get that out of the floor, get it out, get it away." And I knew at that moment something was up. She had gotten dehydrated, she's starting to hallucinate, and I said, no, you're not doing this. So I scooped her up, I took her out on our back patio, my mother's back patio. I sat down, I started praying over her as hard as I've ever prayed in my life, and I said, "Don't you come in here with that mess." I said, "Not in this name, not in the name of Jesus. We've got this, right? By his stripes, she's healed." And I started praying as hard as I ever had, and my daughter goes, like that, and she leaned back, and her temperature broke. And it fell, and it didn't go back up. And just an hour later, she's bouncing around in the living room. And I'm like, that's it. Don't ever come in my house again trying to trick my family, because I know who we are and I know who we pray to. And there's no name above that name. And if there's something going on in your life, I don't care what it is, sometimes you just take a step back and say, "Not today, Stan." Well, there's power in that name. I'm telling you, it's the name above every name. When you call on Christ, there's no weapon formed against you that can prosper. There's nothing that can stop what God has started in your life. I'm not here to preach to you. I don't do preachy. I don't. But I will tell you, there's power in that. When we walk in that authority, there's nothing that can stop you from walking out what God has placed in your life. Amen? All right, I'm done. Let's go home, man. That's good. Here's what we're going to do today, guys. I'm going to give you three things. Say three. Three things that I believe are the components to making the most of today. Say today. Now, a lot of times we tend to think that we're going to get around to it tomorrow. How many of you procrastinate? Some of you raise your hand in a minute when you're ready, right? You're like, "Yeah, I procrastinate, probably. Yeah, I'll go ahead and raise my hand now." Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Here's what we say: procrastination is the art of catching up with yesterday. How often do we do that? Trying to catch up with something we could have done yesterday. Come on, you keep putting it off, keep putting it off, keep putting it off. And then one day, right, what you didn't handle yesterday comes showing up, and it's right in front of you, right? Here's what I tell people all the time. What you turn a blind eye to today will become a blind spot tomorrow. And blind spots are where accidents happen. If you don't get a hold of what you have today, the challenges in your life, I don't mean you have to fight things. A lot of times people are like, "Well, I just got to fight the enemy every day." Here's the deal. You don't have to fight the enemy. The work's already done. When you stand in Christ and you speak that, you don't have to fight him. I heard this the other day. If you always fight your challenges, you'll be fighting your whole life. But if you just face your challenges, you'll be free forever. When you face it and go, "Hey, I see what you are. You got no power here. I don't have to fight you. The battle's not mine. Whose is it?" It's like you can stand in that, and people all the time are like, "I'm getting attacked by the enemy." I don't believe that. Not me. Because I know what the scriptures say. So when I walk in authority, I'm like, oh, you ain't got no power here. It's like kicking a little baby, right? Like, did I just kick a baby in the service? I didn't mean to do that. I would never kick a little kid. But come on, it's like a child. You're like, no, you got no power here. Come on, move. And when we stand in that and start to make the most of today, guys, our life gets better. Come on, life gets better. And here's what I know. It doesn't just happen in a moment. Change doesn't happen in a day. Change happens daily. Please understand that if you want to get better at something, people say this all the time, practice makes perfect. It does not. Practice doesn't make perfect. Practice makes better. And if you're willing to practice at these things, use the tools that God has given you, then you get better at it. And the next thing you know, you're really good at this. This is who you are. And so today I want to give you three things that I believe are components to making the most of today. How many of you want to make today awesome? How many of you like to start today? Use today as something to shift the trajectory in your life to move you to where you want to go. At NASA, they talk about trajectories a lot. I was speaking at an event 3 years ago. A lady comes up to me and she says, "Hey, I'd love for you to come work with our team." And I said, "Okay." And it was a corporate event. So I thought that it was going to be more of that team, of that company. And she says, "I'd like to talk to you." She goes, "We've seen a lot of people do stuff." She goes, "But we need you to come work with our team." And I said, "Okay." She goes, "I'd like to ask you some questions." I said, "Okay, that's fine." I said, "That's no problem." She said, "After the next session, when you're done, I want to sit down with you and just ask you a few questions." I said, "No problem." After the second session I did, she comes, she sits down with me. She starts asking me questions. She asked me a lot of questions. I was like, "Why are you asking me so many questions? I should be asking you questions. It's your group. I'm going to come find out what you're about if I'm going to come speak, right? We know what I can do. You've already seen it. You know I'm good. Come on, girl." But she said, "No, I just want to ask you a few more things." She asked me a few more things. And she said, "No, I think this is going to work out well." I said, "Okay." So she slides her business card across the table. It's her name at nasa.gov. And I was like, "The NASA?" I was like, "It's all right. It's cool." I was like, "The people that went to the moon, the ones that sending people to Mars, that NASA?" She said, yeah, that's us. I said, well, this is going to work out great. My mother-in-law's an alien. I got lots of questions. She's an alien. Some of y'all don't believe in aliens. Go see my mother-in-law. You know about this high, big black eyes, head spins around. It's crazy. I'm just kidding. I told that joke in New York. Just kidding around. No kidding. A lady sends me an email blasting me about how you should honor your mother-in-law. What she doesn't know is that my mother-in-law was watching the service, screenshotted me talking about her, put it on her Facebook page, and said, well, at least he's thinking about me. Come on. Here's the 3 things. You guys ready? Yeah. 3 things. First thing, to make the most of today, really start creating what it is that you want in your life, first thing you have to have is creativity. Say creativity. Creativity. They've got a slide they're going to throw. It's the first one that they stuck up the first time. You guys look at this. I think it's a really powerful image. When I saw this, I said, yep, this is exactly what it is. If you look at the word reactive and you look at the word creative, they're actually the exact same word. The letters are just rearranged. And so creativity is where you stop reacting to what's already happened in your life and you start to create what it is that you want. Does that make sense? Here's what happens in life, guys, and I want to draw this out for you. Those of you on the side, hopefully you can see this, but I learned this a long time ago from a mentor. I mentioned him a lot yesterday, and I typically don't talk about him as much. It was very interesting. Pastor Jeff knew him, but I had a mentor who taught me a lot of different things, and one of the things that he would talk to me about was the difference between a fact and a meaning. The difference between a fact and a meaning. Now, how most of us think and how we're hardwired is the moment you see something, you label it. You have to. It's what your brain does. There's actually a reward center in your brain that the moment you label something, you create something called certainty. And the moment you create certainty, your brain drips a little dopamine and goes, oh, that feels good to know what's really going on. Because how many of you have ever been in a situation before where you didn't really know what was going on and it was very unsettling for you? How many of you know that? And so what do? You start looking around to assess everything. You walk into a room and you go, well, I'll sit there. Maybe I'll sit there. I definitely wouldn't sit there. I could sit there. Oh, you know what? I'm going to sit there. And you don't even know why you do it, but you move your feet and you wind up sitting down in this place that you've decided is the place for you to sit. The moment you decide that and do it, you get this little release in your brain called dopamine, and it feels so good to be certain. And so you're labeling lots of stuff. I tell people all the time, you're a meaning-making machine. Everything that you look at, you put a meaning on it. And so what I learned in life and working with my mentor, he used to say, Ronnie, the facts don't matter. I'd say, what? He'd say, the facts don't matter. He said, because somebody can go through a divorce and they could make it mean that they were unworthy. And he said, but somebody else could go through a divorce and you ask them what they made it mean and they'd say, it meant I was free. Now the question is, in their minds, who's right? Who's right? Both of them are. Why? Why are both of them right? Because they're making up the meanings. So here's the question. Would you agree they're both making up the meanings? Yes or no? Yes. If they're making up the meanings in their life, then my question for you is, who's making up the meanings in yours? So if the question is then, if you're making up the meanings, then why would you ever create a meaning that doesn't cause you to be the most bold, confident, inspired, focused, motivated person that's ever walked on this planet? Why wouldn't we do that? You know why? Because we like playing the victim. We like it. You see, if I can create a meaning on a situation and go, oh my gosh, woe is me, things are just so bad, it's always so tough, guess what happens? I start to get some attention from people, don't I? But over time, it becomes the wrong kind of attention. And you see, we get a bunch of people on our little island. It's called Victim Island. And the next thing you know, you're hanging out with all these people that are a bunch of victims, while the victors are over here going to make it happen. And these people over here often become the haters because the ones over here are really doing something with their life. But over here, everybody's just sitting in their critical zone. There's a difference between having a critical eye and having a critical heart. Yeah. Once it gets in here, you got problems with everything you see. And so here's the key to this. Based on what I just said, what's more important, you think? The event or the interpretation? The fact or the meaning? Which is more important? The meaning. And so guess what? Here's what's interesting. Most of us, what we do is we actually remove this little divider between the fact and the meaning. And now we start thinking that our meanings are the reality. And so guess what happens? When I remove that line, my facts and my meanings become one. And then that becomes my reality. And I start looking at the world through a set of lenses that make my meanings right. Let me say that again. This might be a little bit much for you guys. Let me get this. If you get this, you leave here today, somebody cuts you off in traffic, instead of going, man, you go, oh, yeah, it's cool. Why? Because you get to make up the meaning. You make up the meaning. When I work with people transformationally, they go, oh, you don't know what I've gone through. I'm like, I don't know. And I have to ask you, so what? Now, some people go, how could you say so what? I was abused, I was molested, I had all this. And I say, not so what from the standpoint of it doesn't matter. But my question is, so what will you do with it? Many people couldn't handle losing their family in a tragedy like what went on here. But you know what? They made it mean that there was more of a purpose to serve the world. When you decide that no matter what hits you, you stand up and say, I'm going to do something with it, that's when you become powerful. Otherwise, you'll always be a victim to your perspectives. Today is the day where you say, you know what? We're going to put this little thing up called the leader line. And the leader line is when I decide that I'll always divide the fact from the meaning. And if I'm going to create a meaning, it's going to serve me to be the very best person I can be. That's when you become powerful. You can say the words that I learned. Fact, meaning. Fact, meaning. I say that a lot. Somebody could even say something ugly to you. They could send you an email you don't like and you go, fact, meaning. I'm going to make it mean something so that there's not a charge in my throat ready to chew somebody's head off. I'm going to get myself neutral. Instead of reacting to it, I'm going to get neutral and go, I'm going to create something here. Why not? It's when it gets tough that these programs, these belief systems, these lenses that we look at our life through get provoked. I always say this, pressure provokes programs. How you're programmed runs your life unless you're willing to say, wait a minute, I'm going to have a moment of self-awareness and take a step back. That's when you become powerful. Write this down. Self-awareness is the beginning of all progress. When you become aware of some of your programs and how you've been reacting to life and go, no, I'm going to create, then you become powerful. You start being creative with your mind. Let me tell you what Walt Disney said. I think this is good. You guys ever heard of Walt Disney? Yeah. I know, he's a little guy. He got a little theme park. Walt Disney, here's what Walt Disney said when it comes to being creative. Walt Disney said, around here. Say around here. He meant where he was at. Around here, here's what he said. He said, we don't look backwards for very long. We keep moving forward, opening up new doors and doing new things because we're curious. Say curious. And curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Write this little phrase down. The fastest road to mediocrity is certainty. The moment you create certainty, you go, well, that's how my kids act, that's how their marriage is, that's how my parents are, it's how the church is, it's how the pastor is, it's how Ronnie is, it's how the world is, how Donald Trump is, how Hillary is. Once you decide that that's what it is, you start to be certain, and it feels good. But my question for you today is, what is it that you've decided to be certain about that has you frustrated and stuck? My daughter Addison does Taekwondo. First day she went in, they gave her a white belt. Say white belt. How many of you are in martial arts? Some of you done martial arts. Some of you know I'm a ninja. You could tell when I walked in. Listen, when you do martial arts, what's the color of the first belt they give you, Pastor Jeff? What's the color of the first belt? It's white. Now, my daughter's sensei comes over and says, here's the white belt, and gives it to Addison. Here's what he says to her. He says, this is the most important belt you'll ever wear. Now, me being the ninja that I am, I thought, well, what about the black belt? But what he was saying is if you can approach your life with a white belt, every situation you walk into, you don't have to be certain, proving to everybody what it is that you know, because inside you're feeling a little bit unworthy. When you know who you are, you can operate with a sense of humility. If you want to build something that's going to pierce the clouds, lay a foundation with humility. I'm telling you, when you do that, people will start appreciating who you are instead of always wanting to get away from you because you think you know everything. It's incredible what we do when we start to get creative as opposed to being reactive. Here's what John Wayne said. You guys ever heard of John Wayne? Yeah, John Wayne. He had this tombstone. Here's what it says. His tombstone said, tomorrow is the most important thing in life because it comes to us at midnight very clean. It's perfect. Say perfect. Perfect when it arrives in our hands. It hopes that we've learned something from yesterday. Do you see that what happens when we go through something in life, if we allow the fact to create a meaning in our mind that keeps us stuck, one of the things that we will do because we love to be right so much is we'll fight the rest of our life to prove how right we are about what we've already decided. And so if I've decided that I'm unworthy, if I've decided that the world's always going to be against me, if I've decided that I'm not smart enough, I can't do it, I'm not sharp enough, whatever I've decided, if that's what I decide, I will go through my whole life doing something called gathering evidence. And at the end of the day, I get to lay my head down on my pillow and go, I'm so right. I mean, I haven't done anything really significant, but I'm so right about how I can't do everything. And you know what you get? You get to be right. But here's the question. What's that rightness going to cost you? I said this yesterday. Discipline weighs an ounce. Regret weighs a ton. And a lot of us go through our life thinking about how it used to be, and we don't do anything creative today. Say creative. How many of you think you could be a little more creative? Yeah, a little bit. Here's what you have to do. You've got to be willing to use your mind. You know, the scripture says this, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his what? Soul. You know what the word soul means in the Greek? It actually means psyche. This isn't a heaven or hell conversation. This means what does it profit a man to gain the whole world or to go through some stuff but yet lose his mind? When you get a hold of your mind and decide that you're going to use it for the good instead of reacting to all the bad, you then become powerful. Moving forward today, I would ask you to do this. Every time you get hit with something that you don't like, just kind of giggle a bit and go, what am I going to create here? Yeah. Let me tell you what. Leaders look for solutions. Yes. Victims look for justifications. Yes. How many of you think you're a leader? Yes. If you didn't raise your hand, let me tell you something. We're all leaders. The question is, where are you leading people? Yeah. Managers and leaders, very different. Corporate trainings, I talk about that. Managers tell people. They say, I know the way. Leaders show the way and then go the way. Big difference. And so we got to get creative. That's number one. Here's number two. You guys ready for number two? Say, I'm ready. Here's number two. Here's what you have to have. You get creative, then you have to add the right things to fuel your mind. And the second thing is wisdom. Say wisdom. Wisdom. I created resources. Here's why I create resources, just so you guys know. I create resources because when I leave, a lot of times people ask me to coach them. They ask me to do a lot of stuff. And so when I went to NASA for the first time, the program that I work with NASA on is called Lion. Say Lion. My mentor's favorite scripture was, the wicked flee, no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. And so when we stop reacting to things, we start getting creative. We develop this sense of doing it, taking and making the most of right now. And so with this, when they told me what they wanted me to do at NASA, I started answering all their questions. It took about 9 months, and finally they said, look, this is the program we want you to work with us on. It's called Lion. And in that day, I could hear my mentor's voice just kind of squeaking in my ear going, Ronnie, I told you, if you just stick with it, good things will happen. My mentor passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack. And so knowing what his favorite scripture was and then standing in it and adding wisdom to my mind, when NASA called me and asked me to come down, and I drove off site for the first time at Kennedy Space Center after doing 9 hours of training with them, I knew that God had put me in that place to do something great. But because I had added enough wisdom, I was ready. Please write this phrase down. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. That's what wisdom will do for you. Wisdom. So I have this program, it's called the Lion Program. We sold a ton of them yesterday. We've got some left. But if you buy this, I will tell you, it models the Lion Program at NASA. There's 4 discs in it. The NASA program of Lion is 16 months, 4 months of each section. It's called Looking In, which deals with belief systems. Looking Back, which deals with tragedy and loss, lessons learned. NASA's had some of those, right? Apollo 1, Challenger, Columbia, all sorts of challenges and issues have gone on with missions. When you're stretching for something more than what others have, sometimes it can get a little dangerous. It's called Looking Back. The next one's called Looking Forward, which means assessing your team. John Maxwell used to say this, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, take some people with you. How good is that? That's my quote. I said he said it, but it was really mine. I'm just kidding. And then the last thing, looking in, looking out, looking back, and then looking forward is the last disc. This is about creating a compelling vision for your life. It's getting past some of the old information that you had, the wisdom that you had in your head that wasn't really serving you to move you forward to where you want to go. If you buy this today, it's $50. We'll give you this one for free. This is a $20 program. It goes with it. We have also the second Lion program, which is what we did last year, the second year with NASA. It's called Lion 2. I put about 80 hours into these, by the way. And if you buy that one, you get this next one for free. So you spend $100, you get $140 worth of stuff. If you buy this stuff, you don't like it, it doesn't help you to change how it is you're seeing your life, you can email me, I'll give you your money back, and you can keep the product. It's that good. Why do I do that? Because here's what I know about wisdom. What happens in your mind will happen in time. What you do daily, you become permanently. Right? James Allen, who wrote a book called As a Man Thinketh, he was talking about Proverbs 23:7, that as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Here's what James Allen said: your mind is like a garden. You either cultivate it or allow it to run wild. But if you allow it to run wild, it will produce what are called wild weeds. And those wild weeds will produce what are called wild weed seeds. And those wild weed seeds produce of like kind. Say like kind. That means more weeds. And so those of you who've ever done any gardening before, you've seen the weeds come up. How far up will the weeds come? All the way. You stand in them, what will they start doing? They'll start coming up your leg. But if you can push the weeds back, how far can you push them back? As far as you can see. Putting the right wisdom in your mind helps you to push the weeds back. Now, I was saying this in Colorado, and they was excited about the weed. I said, it's weeds, not weed, you freaks. Get off that stuff, man. I'm just kidding. I called them freaks. They were nice, good people. Let me tell you a few things about wisdom. Here's what wisdom knows. I'm going to give you 4 quick things. Here's what wisdom knows. Number 1, wisdom knows that common sense is a flower that doesn't grow in everybody's garden.